Jewish people, and all of us originally.
This is Storybook Radio.
Chapter 3. The Seventh Hour. Jeffrey bolted out of the pizzeria, weaving through the narrow streets of the quiet place on his scavenger hunt for orientation. I followed close behind, the crisp evening air rushing past as our search intensified. The town hummed with frantic energy. Campers scattered in every direction, diving into alleyways, peering behind shop windows, and pushing open creaky doors. To our right, a red-bricked barbershop sat eerily empty. A static crackle disrupted the air before the intercom hummed to life again, the same mechanical voice droning a longer message this time. At 7 o'clock, we commune. Orientation is at 7 o'clock. Jeffrey slowed to a stop, motioning toward me. Last year's orientation was underground. The only way down was through that manhole right behind the barbershop. I followed his gaze. A round, rusted manhole cover sat flush against the cobblestone. "So, that's how you found it last year?" I asked. He nodded. I saw a group of campers sneaking in and decided to follow. The tunnels below had these old lanterns lighting the way, barely enough to see. We kept walking until we found red arrows sketched in chalk. "Who led the way?" Jeffrey exhaled. "Dot." He shook his head. He was already there, first out of the 500 campers in town. I ground my teeth at the mention of his name. Dot, the reigning champion. If he had found it first last year, then wherever he was now. Orientation was close. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed across the street. More campers flooded out of buildings, their faces filled with the same desperation we felt. Everyone was lost. Orientation was nowhere. Unlike last year, no one seemed to have a lead. We hopped onto our bikes, pedaling past the chapel toward the town's massive cube-shaped library. I scanned the street, looking for anything out of place. Then my eyes landed on a single green dumpster, sitting too close to the chapel windows. A dumpster? "Let's check over there," I said, pulling my bike to the curb. Jeffrey groaned. "You think orientation is in the trash?" I hopped off my bike and flipped up the lid. Piles of trash bags stacked to the top, but nothing underneath. Still, something about it nagged at me. What if the garbage is just a throw-off? Maybe out of the trash you find treasure. Jeffrey shot me a look. "Yeah? Well, keep digging. Let me know when you strike gold." I laughed and dropped the lid. "Fine, let's keep moving." The clock was ticking. It was 3 p.m., 4 hours until the deadline. 4 hours until our points started bleeding into the negatives. Every second counted. We sped past a diner shaped like an oversized milkshake, its pink and white striped straw sticking straight into the air. I slammed my brakes, my tires screeching against the pavement. Jeffrey pulled up next to me, panting. "You hungry again?" "Think about it," I said, my brain working faster than my mouth. "You said orientation is something you find, but what if it's not a place this time?" Jeffrey frowned. "Then what else would it be?" I didn't answer. Instead, I pushed open the diner doors and stepped inside. A faint scent of coffee lingered in the air. Behind the counter, 2 crooks stood motionless, arms crossed over their chests, their eerie, expressionless masks locked onto us. "To orientate," I murmured, thinking aloud, "could mean to position." Jeffrey shifted uneasily. "What?" I repeated the intercom's words under my breath. "At 7 o'clock, we commune. Orientation is at 7 o'clock. I turned to Jeffrey. "What does 7 o'clock look like?" We scanned the room. Booths lined the walls, but one table stood out, round, small, and empty, except for 2 untouched drinks. Ice cubes melted inside the glasses, condensation trailing down the sides. "Not there," Jeffrey said. "Somebody left their drinks." But no one was sitting there. No one had touched the drinks in what looked like hours. And then it clicked. I took a slow step forward, nearly slipping on a wet floor sign. "Hey, Crooks," I called out. "Is that table taken?" The masked figures said nothing. Their bodies remained eerily still. Jeffrey exhaled. They never answer. Ignoring them, I walked up to the table and stared at the drinks. I angled my head, tracing an imaginary clock face onto the surface. If the drinks were clock hands... "They're positioned at 7 o'clock, I whispered. Jeffrey rubbed his forehead. "It's just 2 cups, Sky." I crouched low, running my hands under the table. My fingers brushed against something taped to the underside, a thin, smooth rectangle. I yanked it free. Another one was taped to the opposite side. I held up the objects, my pulse quickening. Found it! The crooks uncrossed their arms. Jeffrey's eyes widened as I flipped open the first booklet. It was a manual. Inside were pages detailing the history of the quiet place, its laws, the guardian, the emerald necklace, and a breakdown of the point system. The second booklet contained the same information. At the very end of each book, a white card was tucked into a sleeve, a barcode imprinted in dark ink. Return to the library before the midnight curfew begins. Sky, Jeffrey breathed. We actually found it. I swallowed hard. So did Dot. Somewhere across town, inside the comfort of his suite, Dot squatted against the wall, balancing on one leg. A tower of 21 orientation books sat stacked on his lap, their spines aligned with precision. His muscles didn't waver. His body remained still, as if he could hold the position for hours. He flipped through the book in his hand with the efficiency of a machine, scanning each page in seconds before moving on to the next. His sharp eyes flickered across the words, absorbing the content as if the knowledge was embedding itself into his very being. He shifted, balancing effortlessly on his grounded foot, his core tight, his expression unreadable. His fingers brushed over the rules, the regulations, the history. A smirk tugged at the corner of his lips as he found what he was looking for. Tiny details that most would overlook, hidden lines between the words, clues meant only for those who read deeper than the rest. He already had the advantage. He always did. His foot pressed firmly against the floor as he turned another page. He was patient, methodical. There was no rush. Because this year, the bookathon wasn't just his to win. It was his to dominate.